All right, now we are live now. So thank you for tuning in and watching another episode of the Spurs Takeover. I'm your host, Joe Garcia, and we're going to be joined by our good friends and our co host. We're going to be joined by Wesley Perkins, who's been MIA for quite some time because he's been busy working. And also,
Yep, yep.
we're also going to be joined by our good friend Jonas Clark. Jonas, it's been quite some time. I know you've been busy working as well.
Yes, sir, man. Just kind of trying to grind and haven't been working as hard as the Spurs have this year, digging themselves out of holes. That is,
Yeah, well,
man.
this game was complete ass from the get go to me. You had some people that need to be put on a milk carton, man. We need to put a milk carton. We need to put LMA on the milk carton, and we also need to put Rudy Gay, man. Rudy Gay was complete ass again. He's looking every bit as old as he can be. We need to get this boy off this team, man. I'm tired of having excuses. I'm tired of all of it. This is not a good night to me. To me, this is the most embarrassing loss of the season. Not because they lost to one of the better teams in the NBA and they lost to the number one seed in the West, but the complete lack of effort was not there. It's like this team just gave up. And it's not very Spurs-like. You have DeMar DeRozan, who has been balling out there. He's the most consistent player for this team. Can we get this man some help? He scored 28 points on the night. You had LaMarcus Aldridge put up a dismal 7. Trey Lyles is a starter. He put up 3 points. You have Rudy Gay. He played 16 minutes tonight, 3 points. I mean, stuff like that's just not going to cut it anymore. You know, Patty Mills had an off night. Usually he's money, from the bench. He had 3 on the night. Derek White again, I don't know what's going on with him, too. You might as well put him on a milk carton. He's been MIA as well. I can't figure this team out, man, and that's the frustrating part. To me, not only as a fan, but also of a steward of the game, you just can't get any rhyme or reason with this team where they looked like, they were able to almost pull out a win against the Clippers. They had a decent effort, somewhat. Of course, they let the third quarter, collapse, bite them in the ass. But tonight, it was just the effort just was not there from the get-go. I understand matchup-wise and, as far as the Spurs' plethora of talent that's out there, just isn't cutting the mustard. But, aside from all the excuses, I'm just tired. I'm frustrated. And to me, this team just looked like complete ass tonight. And I got to say, I picked them to go 2-6. I want to go ahead and clear that up right now. I think I want to resend that 2-6 to now. They're going to go 0-8, dude. This team looks horrible. Horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Wow.
If I was Coach Pop, I wouldn't even address the media tonight. I would just say, we lost, I'm out. I'm done. And I'm pretty much done with this team, dude. That's just me. I'm just frustrated, beyond frustrated with this team. I just don't have any words to go ahead and subside the things that are going on in Spurs Nation right now. It's bad. So with all that said, let's go ahead and start with you, Jonas. I know you're always the guy with the silver lining. So go ahead and let me have it, man. What are the good takeaways from tonight's game?
Well, there's not a whole lot of good takeaways for tonight's game. But I think that we can not rest, but accept the fact that arguably the toughest part of the Rodeo Road Trip is now over. I think that Portland's going to be a tough test on Thursday night, but you went up against the 2 best teams in the West on back-to-back nights, on the road, of course. It's difficult. And I mean, let's be honest, who really do some soul searching here? Who really thought that we were going to start this Rodeo Road Trip 2-0 anyway? Or even a 1-1. 1-1 was hopeful. 0-2, I think, is what we were all expecting to start this Rodeo Road Trip with. If you look at it from a point of reality, we contended yesterday with the Clippers really well. We played 2 quarters today with the Lakers. Again, maybe it's the back-to-back that affects that a little bit. Of course, like you said right out of the gate, Joe, lots of players were missing in action. They were on the court, they were taking up space, but they weren't really contributing much. Uh, I think that the silver lining is, again, the first two games are done. This was arguably the hardest part of the Rodeo Road Trip. Let's focus on Portland. You get a night's rest before you have to go in and play in Portland on Thursday for a team that this is very important because of seeding. You know, we're sitting at a 10th seed right now, trying to work our way back into the playoff picture, and Portland's just ahead of us. Damian Lillard's on fire. He's going to test DeJounte Murray, and what else do you say? We're where I expected us to be with my reality goggles on after two games.
All right. Well, your reality goggles are, I think, dead on, because I picked them to go, like I said, 2-6. I know Chris and some other guys picked the Spurs to have a better record, but I think me and Hutch were the realist in the whole thing, because I had sent Chris, I texted Chris Duel my picks for the Rodeo Road Trip.
And this guy too.
Really, you went 2-6 for me. All right, well there you go.
I'm still gonna call it. We're gonna go better than 2-6 this Rodeo Road Trip. We're starting 0-2, but we're gonna finish better than 2-6.
No, my God, man. So what about you, Wesley? I mean, what did you see in tonight's abysmal game?
Well, I guess the best thing is it was tied 0-0 when it started, and the best thing is it's over. You get a lot of the stuff in between really didn't seem to matter too much to the San Antonio Spurs tonight, Joe. You're right. I mean, lackluster is putting it mildly. Disinterested, unfocused, unprofessional in their approach to the game. You could blame fatigue, but again, they stayed in the same city. Yes, they played the second best team in the West the night before. But, kind of to both of your points, Jonas, you make a good point, too, about these are the best two teams. You'd expect they're probably going to lose both games. But they played a very uninspired Clippers team last night. And if they were going to get a win, they had a shot, because the Clippers looked out of sorts. They looked disinterested. They had that kind of look about them last night. The difference is the Clippers have more talent than the San Antonio Spurs. And when it comes down to it, it's a stars league. And what you see is a guy like LeBron James went off. Hey, I'm not going to take anything away from the Lakers. Yeah, the Spurs didn't come to play tonight, but listen, the Los Angeles Lakers, I was a doubter. I'm not going to lie to you. When I saw this team put together, I thought to myself, okay, you got Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and nothing else. And I would like to retract that statement. This is a team that plays ball the right way. They're getting lots of great inside play, toughness. The length is just unreal. Until you see that team matched up against a team that's in the smaller side anyway, like the Spurs, man, they just manhandled the Spurs tonight. And you're in for a bad night when LMA goes, AWOL, but he goes AWOL and lets JaVale McGee just obliterate him, absolutely obliterate him. And to me, guys, that's the biggest truth is that these teams that have come to play against the Spurs night in and night out and come away with the victory, they're just more mentally tough than our team is. And, there's no other way to put that. We say they go AWOL. Well, Rudy Gay, DeJounte Murray, Derek White, they all tend to go very, very much flat in the front, and they don't want to take a big shot when the game's on the line. Or when they start to miss, they get real tight and tense, and everybody takes it upon themselves. We've seen that time and time and time again where the game's close. It seems like it's going to be a good game. First quarter, right off the bat, neither team's doing real well, but the Spurs are battling. They're playing good D. They're hitting some timely shots. And then come that second quarter, it was just like, okay, the game's done. Lakers went on a mini run. I will tell you this, it's still baffling to me. Lonnie Walker comes in third quarter, starts balling again in the fourth, brings them back, gets it down to a 9-point deficit. And, it just, to me, I look at Lonnie's development. I keep wondering to myself why the guy is not getting more minutes. And for that matter, on his part, why Lonnie isn't being more aggressive, because he's got a pure shot. He's got a really, really, really great set of athleticism along with his finishing ability. He's really a guy that's going to be key to this future for this team. but I just don't know that he gets enough minutes in crucial moments in times. You know, we saw him play in the fourth quarter last night, but I just feel like he doesn't get the time to go in and prove himself instead of a Bryn Forbes or a struggling DeJounte Murray. So my takeaway from tonight is more the same. Yeah, it's frustrating, but let's be honest. Chris was saying that on his radio show that he really felt like he thought they would go, 5-3 or 4-4 would be successful. Joe, you and I agree. I've said 2-6 all along. I do think they're going to beat one of the better teams on this road trip. I think they're going to win against a Utah, or they're going to win against a Denver. But I think they're going to lose to Sacramento. I think they're going to lose to Portland. And Portland is just playing on fire. And again, it's a stars league. The Spurs don't have a star. Damian Lillard is a star. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, well, I'm going to read some of these comments that have come down from some of our friends. Orlando Torres. What's up, Orlando? Orlando and me, we're covering the UTSA Roadrunners football games over at the Dome this season. So shout out to Orlando. He was my media buddy to my right, and then on my left I had JJ Perez. So JJ was always entertaining us, man. JJ's crazy. So shout out to you, Orlando. Mario Mendoza, he says I'm bored. Orlando says too. He says DeRozan has no help. I can't argue with that. I agree with them. Mario Mendoza says Spurs can't beat Lakers. And Doris Copano Basco says hopeless case. Antonio Monaco says inconsistent roster. The worst Spurs, he says, of all times. End of a historic era. And Frank Ramirez says with the Spurs luck, would not be surprised if they go 0-8 on this Rodeo Road Trip. Wouldn't surprise me one bit, because this team is just playing horrible. Let's just put it like that. Hopefully things can turn around after a day's rest that they get, because they're going to rest on Wednesday, and then right on Thursdays when they're playing the Portland Trailblazers. So they have a quick turnaround. I'm sure that they're getting out of the Staples Center and they're making a beeline for the plane and trying to get into Portland as fast as they can to get some rest, because God knows they need it, So the only thing is, I know that we say that the Spurs aren't going to make any moves, I guess you could say, before the trade deadline. But if you look at this team and what they've been able to do thus far, some changes need to be made. If I was Coach Pop and I was some of the coaching staff, I mean, realistically, that something needs to change. And does it need to change this season? Probably not. They're going to roll with what they have. But for next season, something does need to change. You need to get DeMar DeRozan some help if, in fact, he does stay. What are you going to do in that offseason to help this team be more competitive? Because right now they're very inconsistent. And we've seen that since the start of the season. And things aren't changing anytime soon. It's going to be more of the same. I think this is going to be a real tough season for all Spurs fans to watch. It's going to be painful, especially this Rodeo Road Trip. I think this is going to be one of the more memorable ones, but not for the reasons we want. Because it's going to be one of these road trips that's going to stick in your mind for a reason. Last season, they won one game. Well, brace yourselves, because they might be going 0-8 on this one. But to go ahead and relay some of the stats of the night, LaMarcus Aldridge, he played 30 minutes, 7 points. DeMar DeRozan played 33 minutes, had 28 points. Trey Lyles, this is our starting five. He played 17 minutes, 3 points. DeJounte Murray played 24 minutes, 12 points. Bryn Forbes, 25 minutes, 13 points. And our usual suspects coming off the bench, we had Patty Mills, played 19 minutes. He only scored 3 points. We had Rudy Gay, played 16 minutes, 3 points. Blanca Portal, your rock lobster, your spirit animal. Jonas, he played 13 minutes and only had 6 points. But I love Jakob I think he's one of our better defensive players. He gets up there and he can block the ball. He moves quite well in the open court. He can pass. And not only that, but when we have Jakob you have DeJounte Murray and Derek White on the floor together, that trio plays really well, even though they've only played, I think, something crazy like maybe 13 or 14 minutes for the entire season. When they have been out on the floor, they've been very productive with that trio. I don't know why they don't go to them more, but I think it has more to do with Coach Pop going with his veteran players and still trying to stick within his rotations. And I think that's been some of the issues that we've had this season. The rotations have been abysmal as well. And we have trios like this, where you have Jakob Portal, Derek White, and DeJounte Murray, who are playing really well. They don't see a lot of time on the court together because of the rotations and because of the players that Coach Pop is choosing to, put out there on a consistent basis. So unfortunately, we've been too often.
I agree with you, Joe, because it's not the fact that he doesn't want to play him. It's that Jakob Pertl didn't remember his jersey.
Oh Lord.
He remembered his jersey tonight. So hey,
it didn't have anything to do with his performance tonight and the minutes he got tonight. I think that's a glaring. When you look at the minutes breakdown that you just went over there, Joe. That goes directly to the point that Wesley was making earlier about the length that the Lakers have in their lineup. And Pop, for whatever reason, went super guard heavy tonight. We know that he does that in the fourth. He likes to go with 4 guards and LaMarcus out there. He had Bryn and Marco out there as 2 of his guards in the fourth, which was an interesting decision.
Just say it, Jonas. That's an ass move right there, because when you put them on the court together, bad things happen.
When you're trying to dig yourself out of a hole, you have 2 options. You can dig yourself deeper, or you can try to dig yourself out faster. When you're shooting the 3-point ball, you have the opportunity to dig yourself out faster if they're both out there. So while it doesn't make complete sense to us, whether Pop might have already conceded the game at that point. He went to a 4-guard lineup against the Lakers in the fourth quarter. He was already down by 19 points. I would think he was just saying, hey, we can build momentum. But I've said this many times, not just because he's my spirit animal, Joe, but Jakob needs to have more minutes. 16 minutes isn't cutting it. 13 minutes that he got tonight's not cutting it. He is, next to Lonnie, one of the most explosive players on the court, not for the speed that he brings, but for the energy that he brings, for the defensive force that he brings. And when you're going up against, how many times do we see it tonight where the Lakers worked it through ball movement and got switches that they wanted to, and next thing you know, you've got Bryn Forbes, who just got switched. I mean, we can say what we want to about his defense all season, but he got switched off to some really unfortunate mismatches tonight. You can't expect him. You can't expect him to defend Dwight Howard in the paint. That's not going to happen. So why isn't Jakob out there more when you have the length of JaVale McGee, who they were saying, 7'6" wingspan or whatever? Make sure you got your 7-footer out there on the court all night. Jakob got limited minutes last night. Of course, he did miss the one sub in because he didn't have his jersey. So that happened. So, of course, he missed some minutes there.
But does it really happen, though? I don't know that it really happened.
You know what? Jakob doing that last night, that just solidifies the Spurs season in a nutshell.
No.
It personifies it, if nothing else.
The biggest thing of the Spurs season, if you had to put a theme on it all, we've talked about it every time we've been on here. It's just the inconsistency. Yeah. That's been it's not that they don't know what they're doing. Of course, there's the mental farts like forgetting your jersey. Sure, that can maybe resemble that a little bit, but it's just constantly being that's the only thing they're consistent at, is being inconsistent. That's why they dig themselves in. That's why they dig themselves into these deep holes, and then they can dig themselves back out. We were down by 21, and then we closed the gap to 8 because that's just inconsistent play throughout the entire time. When LeBron James decides to go God mode in the fourth quarter, you can't do anything about that. Nobody, maybe Kawhi Leonard It is the only person in the NBA who can stop God mode LeBron James. Okay, and we'll probably
You know how you
that in the
stop? You know how
Western
you stop somebody
Finals.
who's hot? You foul the crap out of them, dude. And I mean, you put the fear of God in them.
You can foul him as much as you want to. He's a 65, 68% free throw shooter.
He is, but he's also old too. You know, you want to hit him so hard you knock the rest of that receding hairline off, you know?
I think that by the time the fourth came along, Pop.
Hey man, we're getting a call right now. Hold on. Thank you for calling the Spurs Takeover. This is Joe. Who am I talking with?
I don't want to give my name.
Oh, that's fine, man. Go ahead and give your take.
I just have a question. This is a serious question.
Sure.
If would you agree that Pop is one of the greatest coaches of all time?
We all do.
Okay, right. So this is my question. This is a hard question.
Okay.
If Pop is the greatest coach of all time, what would happen with this roster not having Pop as their coach? Where would they be?
See, we had that scenario. We had that discussion. Actually, I had that discussion with Chris Duell at the Ticket 760 when I was in studio with him. And what we agreed on is we think the Spurs are bad now. If Coach Pop was to leave, the successor would have their work cut out for them. And what's going to happen is we think that the Spurs, if they don't have the correct personnel out there on the court, they could be even worse off than they are right now.
Joe, can I interject something real quick?
Sure, go ahead.
It's a great question by our caller. And
hold on. Go ahead.
So my question is, what's the next step? It's not a coaching change because we just agree if the coach leaves, we have a worse team. So it's a roster fix. So what are we doing?
Exactly.
Are we going to tank and get lottery picks, or are we going to try to do something with the
I know exactly
training?
what you.
Are we going? Yeah. So what's the next move? And I'll just kind of hang up and listen.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate you calling in. For one, it's a great take, and we appreciate you, taking the time to call in, especially on a late night. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and interject and answer your question, and I'm going to let Wesley go ahead and answer that. Wesley, you had something to say, so go ahead. The caller's still on the line, so have at it.
Yeah. Listen, I think it's a great take. I will say this. I think without Greg Popovich, this team would probably be maybe second to last in the Western Conference. Just being real, because I really feel like there's not a lot of effort and consistency to want to play defense. And Pop is all about that defense. And even though this team isn't quite the defensive team that they once were, he still preaches it. He still wants things to be done a certain way. His meticulous nature and his genius coaching is still evident on every night. You still see the players playing hard most every night. I'll tell you this, and this is my personal take. The problem is the front office, and I'm not calling out RC necessarily.
You better watch yourself, Wesley, because they're going to come for you. Spurs Twitter's going to come for you, man.
But it comes back to some of the decisions that have been made contractually for the team. If you take a look even at DJ, he signed in this big contract over the summertime where it really wasn't necessary at this point. And to this point, I'm not saying that DeJounte's not going to be a strong player, but did he covet that kind of money right now before he had another full season under his belt? You're still paying Pau Gasol $5 million to go basically, coach for another team. And, and part of this, and taking it off the front office for a second, there's also the thought that Kawhi Leonard poo-pooed on this team and left.
The deuce.
But it's also kind of been the rumor that they had opportunities. They had, according to their camp, the chance to go out and seek out, Paul George or others to possibly team up with Kawhi in San Antonio. Now, who believes that? Do I believe that? No, I really don't. I think Kawhi had it in his mind that he was going to out away from the Spurs from the get-go. but there is some things that have gone on. Specifically with some of the bigger contracts, the contract extension of LMA and some other things that you look at, and it's really kind of hampering this team from being able to move on and to make moves going forward.
Yeah, let me interject here, and let me go ahead and pass this off to Jonas as well. But what the caller was basically asking is, what moves do we need to make for the Spurs to be competitive once again? Because it's clearly not all just on coaching, or everybody wants to blame somebody. Yes, the coaching staff has a part to share in this season's, and how it's not gone as planned or the way that we had envisioned. But when we look at it and we get down to the nitty gritty here, it has more to do with the personnel out there, the players. And the problem is, like you just stated, the Spurs really don't have the money at this particular time to really go after some big names because of poor decisions that they made in the past. So that leads us to another scenario, and this is why I'm going to go ahead and use this as a segue for Jonas. The future of the team that hopefully it's going to make them better lies at the Austin Spurs in that G League. You have a Lucas Samanic, Keldon Johnson, and you also have Quindary Weatherspoon, and you also have some other up-and-comers that need a second look out there, because these youngsters are going to start coming into their own in about 2 to 3 seasons, right around the time that the Spurs are going to have some money to actually go after maybe a big name. But at that point in time, we're going to have the players that we have right now, such as a DeJounte, Derek White, Lonnie Walker, Jakob Poeltl, if they even stay with the team, plus the addition of these younger players coming into the league here and maybe get heavy rotation with the team. That could change the complexion of this team dramatically and give us that youth and athleticism and speed that everybody's been clamoring for. So we're going to go ahead and toss it to Jonas, and so you can interject and answer that caller's question. What's going to need to happen to make the team better?
Well, Joe, like Doris just commented in on the stream, she said that Pop's coaching style is getting old. All other teams are way familiar and used to it. They know how to defend Pop and stop the Spurs. This is the result. Pop relies on his vets. I want to take the last part of that because Pop does rely on his vets, and it's because we haven't had the youth talent over the last 5-6 years to really draw from. It's a changing of the guard. Like somebody said in the stream earlier, dynasties die hard. But not all dynasties die, and I think that's where one of the things is the Spurs dynasty doesn't have to die. Some dynasties retool, and you just tread water long enough to get your strength back up and keep swimming again, and swim to the promised land, because that's what the Spurs are getting ready for. To answer the caller's question, the Spurs don't need to do anything. I know it's odd, but the Spurs don't need to do anything. You look up and down the roster. DeMar DeRozan, this is just his second year in the system. Okay, he is an all-star caliber player. I know he didn't make it this year, and he didn't make it last year. But he is and Joe, you earlier said that we don't have a star on this team. DeMar DeRozan is a star. He truly
No, I
is.
didn't say we didn't have a star. I said he needs some help.
He does. Is he Mr. Clutch? No, he's not. I believe that your Mr. Clutch up and coming is Lonnie Walker IV. Yep. He's working on that. So all we really need, rather than talent out there, rather than a coaching change, all we really need is patience. Because I want to go back. So DeMar DeRozan, second year in the system. Trey Lyles, first year in the system. Derek White, this is truly his second season up, and he got more minutes last year than he was supposed to because DeJounte was out. You got DeJounte Murray coming back off of injury. Jakob Poeltl, year 2 in the system. Then you've got call-ups, Chimezie Metu and Keldon Johnson. Keldon's a rookie, and Chimezi's in his second year. So when you look up and down this roster, it's a lot of new. So yes, you're going to rely on your veterans to provide consistency. And I was going back and forth with somebody about this on Twitter the other week. When you have developing players, you can't just go to an all-young rotation. You can't start 5 rookies out there, right? I mean, you can. Look at Phoenix. Look at Sacramento. They've done it before. But you get the same results. And what you actually get is a hindrance in their development because you've got point guards out there directing forwards who don't know where they're supposed to be at in the system. So when they call for a setup, the play collapses, and then you just have attempts with it's just chaos. It's madness. There's no formulation. There is no system. So when you have DeJounte out there, and a lot of people are saying we need to trade DeMar to get DeJounte more minutes and get him more touches because he's deferring too much. He's not deferring too much. I think that he's going through a rough stretch as far as his shooting goes right now. And so he's able to call the play, maneuver, and know that he's got LaMarcus Aldridge, who's going to work his way to the right spot, and DeMar DeRozan, who's going to work his way to the right spot. And then at the end of the day, one of the two of those guys is probably going to end up bailing out the team on that offensive end of the floor and score some points to allow the team to remain competitive. What happens if you start a whole bunch of young guys and you're not scoring points, you don't have the consistent scoring from a DeMar DeRozan or LaMarcus Aldridge, you find yourself down 20 points in the second quarter. And if you're down 20 points in the second quarter, that's demoralizing. Then you're going to have guys quitting on your coach. You're going to have guys quitting on the system. You're going to have guys quitting on the team. And that's when you become just like every other franchise that can't manage their own business in-house. And you never even sniff a championship. You might go on a good run. I mean, there's nights where the Sacramento Kings look like they could be the future because De'Aaron Fox goes off and you have a little bit of the veteran leadership with Harrison Barnes, but I think they've got one of the Bridges kids down there, and you can do that. And Phoenix can go on runs, and New Orleans is getting really young, and they can go on runs. But when you're building towards something, when you're retooling a dynasty, and you're not just trying to win this year, but you're trying to win every year, all it really requires in the retooling part is patience. And that's literally all we need.
Yeah, well, let me hit you both with something real quick before we start, because we're going to have to start bringing this to a close pretty soon. The math isn't in the Spurs' favor right now. The Spurs, before this Rodeo Road Trip, they could only lose 13 more games before they got to the magic 43 number of wins needed, in my opinion, to go ahead and just barely ink in and get that 8th spot. After the loss tonight, now they've dropped to only 11 wins, is what the team can afford for the rest of the season. They have something now, I think, like 31 games left on the season. So they'd have to go 31-11 for the rest of the season. They have 6 games left on the Rodeo Road Trip. If you go and do an offer, you can do the math on that, and that's not going to be in the Spurs' favor. So with that said, if they go and let's say they finish the Rodeo Road Trip and go 0-8, you might as well just call it quits at that point. You know, this Rodeo Road Trip is the make or break part of the season. So I just wanted to go ahead and make everybody aware of that and how important it is for them to have a winning record.
Yeah, I just want to say this, guys, and Joe and Jonas, you're on the money, man. It is patience. And a lot of people, again, tend to forget they're in this situation because they got dumped by the Deuce. This would be looking a whole lot different right now if the Deuce hadn't done what he did.
No pun intended. You said they got dumped on by the Deuce.
You're dang right. So the thing is that in the end, everybody said, well, the Raptors got the best of that deal. Yeah, they got Kawhi Leonard. Yeah, they got their title, and that was it. Okay. The Spurs ended up with a really good player in Jakob Poeltl. They ended up with a very strong DeMar DeRozan, and they ended up with a draft pick, which is probably going to end up being their best attribute going forward because they got a future player. You know, both of them. You know,
they got Keldon Johnson with that.
They got Keldon Johnson. So I would say this. I 100% agree with you, Jonas. I think though, Joe, it's kind of what you're saying. I don't know that they can afford to not to give in or to let things go, or even to go. Even though I would love to see a young lineup go out and just every night, let's go see what these young guns can do. The thing about it is, it's a very, very precarious situation. You have DeRozan, who's guaranteed to come back at the end of the year. So if you don't line up around him where it seems as though they're still, you know, it's worth his time, is he really going to likely stick around at the end of the year? We don't know. He may not anyway. But at the same token, the other side of that coin is a guy like Lonnie Walker, a guy like, White, that are under their rookie contracts right now. They're not guaranteed to stay with this team long term either. So kind of my antithesis to my counterpoint with Jonas is I 100% agree. But I also think we're in the NBA nowadays where we see teams and players teaming up to go elsewhere and quickly jettisoning out, kind of using development from other players. Now, do I think these Spurs young guns are going to do that? I don't think so. But it's going to be really hard to say. How much are they going to get to see it in Austin, and how much do we get to see them actually play for the Spurs? You look at a team like the Miami Heat, and it kind of woke me up to this year. Miami is full of a bunch of guys who've developed either in the G League or that are their draft picks that are really doing well. It is what basketball has been about for centuries in terms of what's going on, not in a centuries, but decades. And that is that you develop players through the draft, like it's been done and been successful to do. And so I agree with that 100%. I want to see that going forward. My only concern is, can you afford to keep them down and not bring them up sooner than later because of the way the NBA is right now? And you don't know what DeMar DeRozan's going to do. What happens if DeRozan walks and those same young guns are not ready to play? That's the devil's advocate to my own argument. That's where you have to look and say, is it worth it? It's hard to know. Either you could tick off DeRozan, he might leave, or you don't develop those guys and they leave anyway, and you're left with nothing.
If I can respond a little bit, I think that the Spurs are honestly okay whether DeMar stays or whether he goes.
Yeah.
If he stays, then yes, you have a star veteran to help kind of guide this team as the youth continues to develop. If he goes, that's kind of okay too, because like we already all recognize that we have a logjam at guard. Keldon Johnson can't even get playing time at the next level just for the sheer fact of who else he has in front of him. So if he goes, you've had Lonnie Walker. I think that having DeMar DeRozan has been one of the greatest things for his development because he is a very similar scorer. You heard it time and time again on tonight's national broadcast. Lonnie is a slasher. That's what DeMar's been his entire career. It was a slasher. Of course, he's the king of the mid-range too. Lonnie, he has the deep ball on his side. He has better defense on his side. You're just teaching him how to work his way to the hoop at the NBA level more efficiently. So that's a win. And I think that next year, don't look for Luka to come up and really provide a lot for this franchise next year. I think that you're going to see, before you see more Luka, you're going to see a bit more of maybe Drew Eubanks, a player that the Spurs have to start making a true decision on. He's on a two-way contract, and he's going to be looking for what happens with his future. Chimezie Metu is going to need a little bit more time. You can play a little bit longer, more length, if you will, in a rotation, putting him maybe at the 3 if DeMar really does go away. You have opportunities here to work these guys in. Keldon is ready for the next level, but more in the minutes restriction, kind of the way that Derek was supposed to be brought along, the way that DeJounte was brought along, and the way that Lonnie's been treated this year. That's the treatment that Keldon's going to get next year. I'm a big fan of Dedrick Lawson. Currently, he's just under an affiliate contract with the Austin Spurs. So therefore, this is the time of year where that's kind of a dangerous point because teams looking to tool up and make a deep run into the playoffs are looking at the G League to see who they can get that isn't owned, their rights aren't owned by another franchise, and he's one of those guys. He's a 16-point-a-night scorer. He's next to walking double-double. He did it at the college level, and he's continuing to do it here at the G League level. And I think that he could really provide a great asset at 6'6", a guy who can score, a guy who can handle, and a guy who can distribute. He can drive to the hoop, and he can hit the outside shot. He's not afraid. And again, he's played for programs like Memphis and at Kansas, so he can handle the big stage. I think that we have to look at maybe signing him for the future. But it's all at that next level. So whether DeMar DeRozan stays or goes, the Spurs will be okay. It'll be fine. Will we make the playoffs? Maybe not. But then that's okay. Every Spurs fan will get what they've been at. All Spurs Twitter's been asking for the young guys all season anyway. So there will be your wish next year. Are you willing to stick around for it? Are you willing? They call them growing pains for a reason, because it's not easy. You go through struggles. It's like teaching a kid how to do anything, right? Sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. The dog you're training still pees on the carpet sometimes, because those things happen. It's a process.
Hey, I still pee on the carpet. I still pee on the carpet after a night of drinking.
and it happens, again, like I said earlier, Luka Šimanić, he needs some more size. He's still working on figuring himself out. I was watching a little bit of his action again earlier, catching up on some of his games. He's really figuring out his touch along the rim, but as he adds mass, will that change his touch? He's going to have to keep working with Chip on that. And that's probably one of the biggest things too. How does this team improve moving forward? They've got to get better at shooting. Again, we're talking about they've been consistently inconsistent. And oddly enough, that's going right back to the free throw line. Like, how are we not Spurs system, Spurs basketball, winning basketball in the NBA is about doing the basics and doing them well. You can't give up 3 baskets when you just can't.
Yeah, well, this is where I'm going to interject. I'm going to interject here, and I'm going to say something. You said they need to practice. They need to get better at shooting. They need to get better at their defense. The staple of the Spurs system is all centered around defense. If the defense isn't solid, the system will fall apart, much like we're seeing this season. The offense has been, I think, better than it was last season. What has been really noticeable has been the defense. And there's no reason for that other than just the players out there coming together, communicating, getting in position, not being late on your defensive rotations, and just having that, I don't know, that you have to have that certain effort that to come out there and play defense every night. I just don't see that.
You have to have the effort, but you also have to have the experience. And that's what I was touching on earlier. Just really quick here, Wesley, sorry. Yeah. These are all new guys still. They're just in their second year in the system. How did the Spurs develop into a championship team over 20 years? They were homegrown. Again, I've made this point before. Look up and down the San Antonio Spurs roster. How many guys came in on free agent contracts? How many guys came in as part of a trade? It's because that kind of basketball is not instilled in them. That's why we just need the patience, because Austin hasn't figured it out either. Keldon's defense is still inconsistent. Luka's defense is inconsistent. Those guys are giving up 109 points a game too, because they're still working on it, because they're still figuring out their communication, and the Spurs are still figuring out their communication, because we've jigsawed together a team that doesn't have a base, a foundation. I've said it many times on here before too. When you had the big 3, you didn't have to worry about anybody else, because those 3 would do theirs and to an above Hall of Fame level. We don't have any Hall of Famers on this current roster, so it does rely on the team's cohesiveness a little bit more.
So this is what I'm going to tell you.
But any Hall of Famer.
You got 2 minutes, Wesley, because we're going to start bringing this to an end.
You got it. I would say I would do that. Any Hall of Famer. Just give me one leader. Give me one person out on the floor who helps that team come together. To me, it's not whether or not they have the talent. Joe, to your point, I don't know that their offense really is all that much better. They literally are in a league that has upped its offensive output because possessions have increased. And so I think that's a lot more of it. It's not necessarily that they're better offensively. I think they're probably down in most offensive categories this year in terms of their shooting percentages. But
they're actually up. They're actually up. If you look at the basketball reference and you compare the team compared from this season to last season, as far as offensive production goes, it's actually up.
Okay.
But last year you had 8 new players on the team. This year you've
True
only
enough.
got 4 new players.
Yeah.
So
Right.
again, communication and understanding the system. Sorry, Russ.
No, it's good. That's just my thought is that, they're just lacking a leader, somebody out on the floor that can really
100%.
run things
Yeah, I agree.
and help everybody be in the right places.
They need a floor general, and they're kind of missing that. Patty is the
Not even
seasoned
a
veteran.
floor general, like you said, just a leader.
Yeah.
Somebody to hold people accountable, because you can have your floor general is typically like what he's going to be that's going to orchestrate the offense. But they just 100% right, Wesley. They don't have anybody holding anybody accountable, making sure they're in the 100%.
Yeah.
Yep. So before we go ahead and end this, let's go ahead and give you guys a chance to plug yourselves so everybody can follow you on social media. We'll start with you, Jonas.
All right. On Twitter, I'm at Jarkclonas, JARKCLONAS. Like kind of like Joe alluded to earlier, I do focus on the Austin Spurs a little bit more. I'm working on another piece right now for the Project Spurs as we come down to the trade deadline. How is that going? How is the San Antonio Spurs needs going to impact the Austin Spurs? Not just in the immediacy, but in the future with the decisions they decide to make or not make, as to whether who leaves the team and who comes in and joins the roster. And that's really, if you want to talk football, I will be watching XFL. I haven't figured out who I'm cheering for yet. I'm kind of leaning towards
Houston
New York
team?
because they have a Houston team, but I'm kind of leaning towards New York just because if you look up and down their roster, they've got a lot of our former Commanders guys on there.
Okay.
There you go.
Big Play McKay. So I don't know. I'm really cheering a lot for a lot of our Commanders alumni.
Yeah.
Just it's great to see them pop up on rosters across the XFL, but they've got that kicking off this weekend. So I've got all of those games recording. So I'll have a little bit of that on Twitter too, but at Jarkclonas on Twitter. Thank you, Joe, for having me on again.
Yeah, no problem. You're making me sad, man, because I remember going to the Commanders game and covering them as a member of the media, and I have a lot of fond memories of that. I still have some of the programs and some of the stuff that they gave us when we were at the game.
Got them all.
Yeah, I got them here, and I have the media passes that they gave us as well. The lanyard and all that.
Cards.
Yeah, the trading cards. There you go.
I looked at the trading cards, and I even found a 6-pack of Alamo Commanders.
Oh, don't you dare drink that.
Man.
Don't drink that, dude, because they don't make it anymore.
I know. So I live those memories every day, man.
Yeah, I miss them, man. Well, you, Wesley, where can they follow you on social media?
Well, I wish I had a cool Twitter handle like Jarkclonas. Like if I did mine, it would be Pesley Workins. I don't think that would be very good. I'm at Wesley Perk. Super proud. This is like Texas Tech moment right here of Patrick Mahomes winning the Super Bowl, first ever Texas-born quarterback and Big 12 quarterback to start and win a Super Bowl. So of all the great programs, no offense out there, but not you, UT, not you, A&M, not you, Baylor, but Texas Tech University's own Patrick Mahomes. Thank you very much. So, yeah, at Wesley Perk, look me up. Lots of fun. Still love our Spurs, want them to do well. Nobody's ever hoping that they tank or don't do well. So lots of stuff to talk about, a lot of fun to still talk about the rest of the season. Yeah,
I started something on Super Bowl Sunday when the Chiefs won, or when they were doing good, especially in that last quarter. I put Mahomes, my homie. So that's my saying now. Mahomes, my homie.
Mine was Wreckham Chiefs.
Oh God, you and Clint Proctor, man. Clint was he's a big Texas Tech fan, so Clint was all up in arms, over Mahomie, Patrick Mahomes. So I'm happy for both you guys since you all are big Texas Tech fans. So congratulations on that win, and not only that, but Mahomes, man, he's the youngest quarterback in NFL history to win the Super Bowl, and he also got the Super Bowl MVP. So that just goes to show you, man, the caliber of player that he is. He came up big in the biggest moment, and unfortunately, Garoppolo just didn't have it. I don't know if he got shook, but something happened to where, I think they just really got away from their game plan. The Niners, they were
100%.
right there. They had the lead, and they just away from what was working. Kind of like the Spurs at times, you know. They come out in the first two quarters, and play great, and that second half, not so much. So
You gotta go with what's working and play Jakob Pertl.
there you go.
That works. It works.
The Rock. We need to call him Rock Lobster because he got that sunburn. He got all red.
Lobster.
Yeah, Rock Lobster.
He's getting it, and I know we're wrapping it up, but you realize this is back-to-back years that he goes out for the Rodeo Road Trip, and he's got a good red tint to that skin. He's working, guys, on absorbing the power of the sun like he did last year when he really broke out with the franchise. He could really wreck some stuff by the time that this Rodeo Road Trip starts to come to an end, because it was last year after he fell asleep in the sun and he went on a tear. And that's when I first dubbed him Block of Pertl, and I am so ready for it again this year.
We need to get some shirts made, man, and go to the game. Block up Portal, man. Block up Portal. So we got to do that, Jonas, before the season's over. Before the season's over. Maybe we can get Wesley to come out as well.
Oh, hell yes. I'll be out for sure.
I ain't going to lie. If I go to a game, I'll probably be drunk before I get there.
Well, that's the
why
only
you
way we
take
can
the
enjoy it. We're
advice.
not going to win, so.
$5 via gets you a round trip.
I probably take an Uber over there. I'll probably take Uber because I'm old. You know, I don't want to get on no damn bus. I ain't trying to get on no bus, Jonas.
Via it's on the up and coming, guys. It's gotten a lot better.
All right, so we'll go ahead and come to an end right there because Jonas is frozen on us. But you can reach me. I think you got too much of the sun in you, man. You kind of froze up on us. Well, you can reach me at Two Shots Podcast. It's all spelled out, TWOSHOTS Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and you can also check out the replay of the Spurs Takeover and previous episodes on our YouTube channel. So make sure you go and subscribe and check out our videos. And you can look at our video wall of all these great videos at twoshotspodcast.com, our website, which has all the latest episodes of the podcast and the replays of all these Spurs Takeover post-game shows. And also make sure you go and visit our friends at Project Spurs for all your great Spurs coverage at projectspurs.com. And for your local sports coverage, go ahead and check out projectspursnetwork.com. So for Jonas Clark and Wesley Perkins, I'm Joe Garcia. Thank you guys for staying up late. You guys are the real ones. And watching another episode of the Spurs Takeover. So like we always say, spread the love, stop the hate, be kind, we're out, peace.